I hate having to turn to Reddit in order to get a pronunciation for a name, but I always have trouble with this Marvel creator's name, Bill Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz? Bill Sienkiewicz. I think that's it. Anyway, he's got a nice rant today that is actually very correct. So we're going to go over it before we get into today's topic. And this is going to be a lot of fun. All right. My name is John Delarose. I am a #1 best-selling author and award-winning comic creator. We have 9 days left on our High School Girl in the Crusades right now. Like Bill suggests, we're making our own properties, making our own things, making good content that's a lot of fun, just like comics used to be. So you can check this out on Indiegogo for as long as it lasts. We got some bad actors, which I'll go over on stream later today, if you're watching this, who are trying to take the campaign down. So it's a bummer, but this is what we deal with for making good content like this. So if you like the channel, please support our book, support what we're doing. We got channel memberships, Patreon subscriptions, however you want to support's the best, and I appreciate all of you guys who do so. All right, so Bill Sienkiewicz? Yeah, actually made a nice comment about Lord of the Rings. Obviously, everybody's looking at Lord of the Rings and seeing the Amazon rings of power, power. You know, when they use power like that. There's a reason these days. It's unfortunate. Is a woke nightmare even before it shows up. I mean, we've seen just the Vanity Fair pictures, and they're bastardizing J.R.R. Tolkien's world like you could never imagine. And it's unbelievable, but this is what corporate entities do every time. And they think that, I don't know what they're thinking. I really don't. But I guess they think they can influence us through their beliefs and things like that. And that I guess we'll get brainwashed somehow. And it kind of works, I'm not going to lie. But that's another topic for another time. I've always been of the opinion that you shouldn't do this sort of thing. You shouldn't make rampant changes to the characters of people's works. I've talked about a creator friend of mine who actually got a deal for his comic book property. I'm not going to mention names because certain people in the industry are not allowed to talk to me and yet do. And this person had the Hollywood agent on the other side demand that one of the characters be gender swapped and race swapped and all that. And he's like, no, I made this character this way for a reason. He actually stood strong, and that comic TV show adaptation ended up not getting made because they just had too many fights about that. I appreciate that, people standing strong, and J.R.R. Tolkien was the type of person who stood strong against this kind of thing back in the day. There's been countless movie adaptations proposed to him and TV adaptations, etc., of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and he turned them down. Back in the 50s, you know, he actually got one and said that the writing was so bad on it, just on the descriptor, that he could never allow something like that to get near one of his properties. He was very cautious about it, and actually his son Christopher Tolkien was very cautious about maintaining the integrity of his properties through the notes and things like that also. Now, J.R.R. Tolkien's been dead a long time. Christopher Tolkien died a couple years ago, and what we've got now is a group who actually does not care about the properties, who is just out there to make money, hounding it out to Amazon, or I should say whoring it out to Amazon, to do their bidding with Lord of the Rings and use it as a brand, rather than actually using it as the story that everybody loves and knows. And this is intentional by SJWs. They always want to change things to destroy these properties because they are jealous of the old properties like Lord of the Rings, even Superman, Spider-Man, all these things, because they know they could never create anything like that. All they get to do is glorified fan fiction of those properties, and they just don't have their own creative bones in their bodies that are that good anymore. We really have a nepotistic lack of talent in Hollywood and in mainstream comics that's been put there who just really have no ability to tell good stories whatsoever, and they seethe about it. And that's what this all comes down to at the end of the day. But Bill Sienkiewicz actually had some talent. He was doing cool artistic things at Marvel in the 80s. You might remember him from Electro with Frank Miller or Daredevil with Frank Miller. They did some cool stuff in the graphic novels that people really enjoyed, and it was a really different, interesting, new artistic expression at the time. And he was a real creator, unlike a lot of the guys these days. Now, Bill is a crazy SJW too. You know, a lot of these older guys get bitter, and they misplace their anger at the way that the industry really does treat its creators terribly towards the fans who are, of course, against the woke culture that's really replaced them. But he actually nailed it when he talked about Lord of the Rings right here. This is a post from Richard Pinney, who is the husband of Wendy Pinney. They're the creators of ElfQuest. And ElfQuest is a fantasy storyline that's been independent for years. I've read it since I was a kid. Absolutely love it. And here's what Richard has to say about Lord of the Rings, which, of course, he's talking about ElfQuest a little bit, but it's very interesting, his take on this. And he's finally starting to see the light, whereas people have been just getting so irritated that they're doing, oh, it's Black Spider-Man and gay Superman, yeah, in the industry for years now. And it's just eye-rollingly cringe because these people can't create. But here is what Bill says. Of course, he couches it towards his own people, but, the root of this is pretty correct. I understand that so many young women and people of color want to see themselves represented in entertainment. By the way, none of this stuff has to do with anybody wanting to see themselves. None of the creators actually talk to, like, young women or people of color. They are imagining what these people want, and they're saying, oh, I would like to see myself in this work, so this black 13-year-old must be represented because she must feel the same as me. When the black female is not paying attention to Lord of the Rings whatsoever, she does not care. She's not interested. They've got their own stuff. There's lots of stuff out there. It's really ridiculous. But that's another... I'm on a tangent already. But, and this is where it gets good, I honestly feel that what I would love to see in stories, I don't know what GB stands for, written that do that from the ground up, not retrofitting and reimagining something to suit the current political climate. It's like saying, all this pine should really be oak. Fucking pine. This is a really interesting statement right here, because I've never seen the SJWs kind of admit this. They always say it's a good thing to just destroy these characters and rebuild them as new shiny black characters or whatever it is that's fashionable in the moment. Usually these creators are all about that and are saying, why are you so mad about it, huh? Is it because you're racist? And no, it's just because people are looking at something that's a work of art like Lord of the Rings and saying, why are you changing it? It's perfect as it is. This is beautiful art, and you messing with it is like going up to the Sistine Chapel and just you remember that, it wasn't the Sistine Chapel, but it was a fresco or whatnot in a church 10 years ago, and they were going to retrofit it and clean it up and restore it. And you remember how it was a beautiful art from the Middle Ages, and when they screwed it up, they messed up the face, and it was this blur of a face with a bad smiley face on it, and it just looked terrible. That's what these people do to these beautiful works of art every single time. And so Bill Sienkiewicz nails it on the head right here. People should not be doing this. They shouldn't be taking these properties, these wonderful, iconic stories, and doing things like this. Make your own if you want to be an idiot, if you want to be woke. But of course, they won't do that because every time a woke new property comes out, nobody buys it. So they are trying to manipulate the brands because there's enough brand simps out there that will buy it anyway, that way they can feel good about themselves when they can't make it in the own market. So I make my own stories. I'm happy doing that. I never have wanted to work for Marvel or anything like that. And, it just sells fine. And I like it. And people like it because they get word of mouth about it, that it's good. It's not pushing any sort of woke agenda. And that's the problem. You just can't do that because you can't write good fiction doing that. But I digress. Bill's point here is correct in that you shouldn't bastardize these old properties. Despite strengths and failings, things are what they are. Make something new. This is what we've been telling them the whole time. They can't do it, Bill. They just can't do it. But here he does give a good example. Now, I mentioned Wendy Pinney and ElfQuest and how I've read that since I was a kid, and I enjoy it. Look, Wendy and Richard are left-wing people, and I know this, and there's no qualms about it. But what they are is independent people who are doing their own thing. They did make their own story, and they are hard workers. They're not rude to their audience. Look, they've got a whole world of elves that really goes all the way, you've got the Arabic elves and the black elves and all that. It's this whole giant world of elves all around. And it's their world. They're allowed to do what they want with it, and they're allowed to tell the stories they want with it, and it's fine. So I've enjoyed it. Again, I don't feel like they prioritize that first and just shove color of skin in people's faces. They actually have a story first, and that's very crucial to all this. But that's the whole deal, and Bill says the same thing. She created a whole cloth from a world, several worlds full of amazing characters that are entirely hers, entirely sui generis. She did not rewrite a pre-existing story by some old white guy, which I take exception, to calling Tolkien some old white guy. Tolkien is probably one of the most brilliant minds to have ever lived, and you should respect him as such. But oh well. She's brilliant, and the showrunners and young writers of every persuasion should follow her lead. Yeah, it would be nice if this would be the case. It would be nice that if people actually made their own content in Hollywood and in Marvel and DC and mainstream comics. Unfortunately, we've got a system that's not set up for that. We've got a system that actually discourages that actively. And all these people are just bitter, angry SJWs who just want to destroy anything that exists because they think if they can do that, that somehow makes their own work more valid. And that's it. So don't listen to me. Listen to Bill here, because Bill is on your side. He is a left-wing guy, and he's telling the truth. Making something like Lord of the Rings into this Amazon woke of the rangs is retarded, it's terrible, and nobody wants it. It does not provide good art. It does not provide good representation. It is just pure woke garbage. That's it. All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you think about this down below, and we'll be back soon.